afternoon, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me still. I had to reset all my microphones and everything and all that stuff for whatever reason, but it's good to be back. It's been a hot minute since I was here doing anything, so I'm hopeful that we have a nice stream today. I don't have a whole lot to show today, just some basic stuff. I'm working with some natural batero today, and it's been a long time since I used any of this stuff. So I'm gonna have to kind of refamiliarize myself both with streaming and with this material here as well. So, second here, I'm gonna adjust my camera a little bit here. It's a little dark. That. Nope, it won't let me. Oh well, next time. But no, I was those of you who may recall, a couple weeks ago I took a trip to Indianapolis, and I had a nice dinner with some friends there and had a really good time. And when I came back from there, I got my first case of COVID, which was a really awesome and fun time. So it's been a couple weeks recovering from that with all sorts of different things going on. So it was not a fun time. I would not recommend it. But feeling good now. So to those of you who were privy to everything going on, I thank you for the kind words and the well wishes. It was much appreciated. And I think I'm fair to say I'm pretty much back to normal now. So everything doing okay now. Like I said, I've got a couple things here. We're going to be working on a natural batero bifold. And the big thing with working with natural batero, which is something I don't mess with too often, is that any kind of natural leather is very easy to leave marks on, things you don't want to be seen on it. So I'm actually being pretty bold, even just having a cup of coffee on my desk around this stuff, just because it, knowing myself, the risk of spilling a little drop on it right in the middle of something will be great. But I think we'll be all right. So as usual, I've gone ahead and I've done most of the boring work, and I've cut out my different pieces here. Just keeping it simple to start with here, just basically getting the card slots and everything in order here. So I've got four. This is a 6-slot bifold, is what this is going to be. So I've got 4 V-shaped card slots, and I've got 2 outer card slots. You notice one of these is much larger than the other here, and that's because we're going to do some foil stamping today. Actually, not foil stamping. We're going to stamp the customer's initials in it, but without any foil, so it will be a blank stamp. There'll be a couple things we need to do to test that before we get to that point, but I think we'll start with that. And I like to do an oversized piece when I do an initial stamp, just because it gives me a lot of room to kind of position this around and make my final cut on that to get it aligned just right. I know that I could use jigs and things like that to align them on the stamping machine, but I like to do it this way just because it gives me a lot of control throughout the whole process. You know, throughout both the stamping and then afterwards, I still also have room to go in and adjust afterwards should I need to. And then in addition to that, the scrap that we get, the waste that we'll cut off from that, is very useful for putting through the bell skiver or testing on the creasing machine and things like that, all of which will be quite important with this, because another thing about natural leather is that when you're applying heat to it, it is very easy to burn, and it does not look very nice when you do that. So I think to start with, what we'll do, we'll go ahead and we'll start with the initial stamp here. Let me just double check what he wants stamped on. RJJ, what he wants stamped on. Oh, and I can adjust the brightness of my camera. That's a little bit better. A little bit of a... There we go. Had a little bit of a frame rate issue there for a second, but it looks like it corrected itself, so alright. Good enough. I won't look a gift horse in the mouth. I immediately forgot again what his initials were supposed to be. RJJ. Okay, very good. Let's get the type out. And I have I use a set of lead foundry type. The brass type is nice, but it's very, very expensive. And even now, the foundry type has started to become pretty expensive too. in places. It used to be the kind of thing where you could get it. People basically just sold it for scrap weight, to be melted down and cast into whatever. And a lot of guys doing home reloading and things like that would buy it, hundreds of pounds, for pennies on the dollar, just to melt it down and cast it into bullets. This one here I was fortunate to find. I think it cost me maybe $20, but it's a really good condition set of foundry type, and I like the font and size that it is. So I use it for all of the stuff here. So, see, I think it's JRR. Let me see. No, it's RJJ. RJJ. Somebody please type that in chat. RJJ. Just because I keep forgetting. 2 J's, 1 R. 2 J's, 1 R. Here's our R. 2 J's. And let me grab what's in the machine right now. RJJ. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah, John, you wish. Okay. All right, I'm going to switch over to the other camera here. I can't seem to get the microphone working properly on that one, so I'm just going to use the default camera that I have here over the desk. If it's too quiet to hear anything, please let me know, but I think you should be able to hear what I'm saying at least. Probably a little bit muffled, but it should be audible enough. If you can't hear me, let me know in the chat. I'll come back and check in a second here. We're going to go ahead and put this into the foil stamp machine and turn it on and let it start warming up. Even though it's a blank stamp with no foil, I am still going to put a little bit of heat on it. Not as much as I would with doing a foil stamp. I generally do those around 175 degrees Fahrenheit. This one here I'll probably get up to maybe 1 1/4, just to get a little bit of darkness and a nice impression on it, but nothing too crazy. So we'll switch over to that. And you should still be able to hear me. All right. Yeah, okay. All right, yeah, I think you can hear me. So, RJJ. Here. That's upside down. Now, one of the things with foundry type is that not all of the letters are cast equally, and that you will get some elevation difference between them from time to time. So you really have to look at it, and most importantly, you have to do a test stamp. It doesn't take much. We're just going to do. You notice I always keep a bit of scrap around. It's very handy for doing that. Let's see how much you can see that. You can see it kind of. This camera, like I said, I was disappointed with this camera. It does not offer me much control over the focus. So it seems to be a fixed focal length. And it works for most cases. I think it's good enough to use on the skiving bench, but it was not actually good enough for me to use as just a general bench camera. So that third J is a little high. Get that snugged up there. It's still a little high. So what I'm going to do, one letter is high. I'm going to take, I actually got one here already still. It's got too much. No. I've got a little piece of copper I'm going to use as a shim. Just going to place it up underneath things there. Let's see how that looks. Cinch down, snug it down a little bit. again. Did I do that right now? I'm still high on that last one there. Oh, it's because the shim moved over. That's why. Oh, here comes trouble. I'm looking out my window and I see my mother walking up the sidewalk. Hello, Mother. Hold on 1 second. Hello, you're on camera. Thank you. Okay, thank you. I'll be down later to can.
Yeah, and her raviolis are in there.
Sounds good. I'll let her know. Thank you.
Making pizza with her spaghetti with her sauce.
I'll see you later. It's my mother bringing groceries. All right, let's try this again. I think I've got this now. This is why I know some folks do initial stamping and things like that at no charge. This is why I charge a little bit for it, just because oftentimes I'll spend sometimes 10, 15 minutes just getting these things arranged here. So I'm pretty close now. Let me see. I'm going to switch over to the other camera. So you can see here, this one here is the last one I did, and it's pretty okay. Closer there. You can see on this first one, maybe you can see it here. Yeah, this one here. It's a little hard to make out with the camera here, but that last J is just a hair higher than it should be. Now, this is almost it. I'm still not happy with it, because looking at the way these letters are, the tip of the R and the tip of the J are very close together. It just looks a little off to me. Now, that doesn't need to be changed much. We don't need to do much to that, and all we're going to do, actually, in this case, we don't even need the copper. I think just a paper shim will be enough. Just push that in there between the two letters. Again. I think I did this backwards, actually. Now that I look at it, I realize now the shim should have gone under the other letter. Let's revise that. Boy, this is thrilling content, isn't it? Like I said, forgive me, I'm a little, still trying to remember how to do this again. Oh, that's pretty good. I think that should do it. Let's see how that looks. Let's try that. No. Mio Mayo. Middle J is high now. Try that. Something's still off about that. These adjustments are so tiny, you almost don't even register that you're doing them. Let's try That's something is way off with that. No luck today, folks. Let's just put it in again. At that point, I'm just going to take it all out. Restart it, see what we got. In fact, I'm going to change out 2 of the letters here. At some point, if I've messed around with it that much, and the letters are still off, I have to assume that maybe it's the letters themselves. Maybe there is no salvaging this one. Maybe we just have to put some new type in. So let's see. Because like I said, every one is a little bit different. And it's basically impossible to tell how they are different until you have them in the machine and you're making stamps with them. This one here, one of these J's here. Well, J must be a cursed letter. Because this one, every single one of these seems to be somehow dramatically different. This one here is a full, almost a 0.5 millimeter taller than the other one. Never in my life, of course, the first time I tried to show this on camera is when I have these bizarre problems. Never before have I had this much trouble setting up an initial stamp. I think we've just got bad luck today with that, which happens. Let's see here. I think this might be good. I'm going to change out the R. I'm going to change out all 3 letters. Yeah, John, I think you did. I think you did curse my J. I can't believe you would do this to me. In the hell? Something I must be doing wrong here. I must be doing something very dumb that I'm not seeing. Got them fully seated. Everything is there. Everything is as it should be. Everything's lined up there. Why is... Okay. Alright, well. We're almost there. I think I know what I have to do. Yeah. Got to shim the 2 J's. That's what it's going to be. 2 J's require a copper shim under them. That should be getting us to where we need to be. That finally looks right. Okay. We're going to get to see this done now, finally. So we're going to take... This is going to be the piece that this is actually going to get stamped on. I'm going to give myself a fair bit of leeway. I want my stamp to be roughly somewhere about here. So I'm just going to kind of eyeball that on the machine there and tape it down. Let's see here. Yeah, let's go back to the machine. That is just nuts how long that took. Again, we're just... Because we have so much room on this piece here, I can get it fairly close. I think that should be good enough. Take some low tack tape. Just tack this piece down here so it doesn't move. Every once in a while, you'll find yourself having to make a second stamp. Even when everything should be perfect and just right, every now and then you'll get something that'll just not work the way it's intended to. Like, for example, like what we just had there. Good, right? So we're going to let that start warming up. It is turned on. Let's make sure it's actually... Yep, we're on. Okay. While that's warming up, while that is warming up, we're going to go ahead and heat up another machine here. John, I can't believe you would do that to me. We're going to heat up the fileteuse, and while we're waiting for that to warm up, before we do our stamp, we might as well start addressing the top of these here. Get these card slots dealt with. This actually will not take very long to warm up because I'm running it on a very, very low temperature, almost barely even maybe 100 degrees on this. That's really all it needs just to leave a good impression. It's much hotter than that, and if you linger for even a second, you will start to burn it. You really, really want to be very careful doing that. That warms up, and I'll put the rest of my lead type away here. Fellows are small and easy to lose, so I keep those contained as much as we can. Jeff, I just saw your message, and it took me longer than I care to admit to finally invest in one of those little cases there to do this. I used to just keep them all. They came in the original box that they were in, wrapped up in paper. So every time I needed it, I would unwrap it and pluck them out and put them all back in order. And there's like 300 or 400 little of those pieces in there, and when you pull one out, they all shift over, and it was just a mess. So I finally, after way too long, I finally got around to organizing it into a manner that was easier to use. Let's see what temperature we're at on the here. So okay, so we're up to 100 degrees on the foil stamp machine. I'm going to take a couple little pieces of scrap here. I think I'm going to try and do a quick test stamp. No, I'm not going to. I don't want to leave any transfer. I'm just going to... I think I'm just going to risk it and stamp it as is. I think about 120, 125 degrees should be just right for that. So let's see. Warming up here. We're up to 110. I got this machine for about $300 in total. Actually, this is a full quick print machine. These usually sell for about $1,500 to $2,000 new. I found this on Craigslist broken for $150, and then with a new RoboTemp and a thermostat on there, which cost me about $100, $150. I have a fully functioning quick print for about $300 total investment. So if you're willing to look around and try to find a used one, or even better, a broken one, you can get them very, very inexpensive. And these are obviously extremely capable machines. This is arguably much more than I actually need for what I do. You can see this loop here is designed to hold a bunch of foil in it, and to be able to do, you have your fences set up and have something where you just have a die and you just set it on there and it's all lined up, and just to do a lot of them all in one go. Doing what I do, like I said, this is much more machine than I need, but it was the kind of thing where I couldn't say no to it. So we're at about 130 degrees. Let's go ahead and do a stamp. Just kind of kiss it. That looks pretty clean. I'm going to go in again because I just want to get a little more depth out of that. Now, that R is a little lower than I would have liked. I'm getting a little more depth out of that piece there. So I'm going to try, before I do anything else, rather than adjust the machine, I'm going to fit a shim underneath it. I'm going to fit a shim just under the two J's, which should let me make a stamp just into the J's. Perfect. There we go. I'll show you what we just did here. Yep. Come back over here. So that's a very unscientific way of doing this, and I know the people who do a lot of this, specialize in this kind of thing, are clutching their pearls after watching that. But we got it done. There's a couple interesting things to note from this. So like I said, we did several stamps there. Actually did 3 total stamps at different depths. Not intentionally, mind you, but we ended up having to. So on the first stamp, the R is just a hair lower than the 2 J's. That's kind of hard to tell on the black test leather I was doing with, but it's very noticeable on the natural batero. So what we had on the first stamp, the R was very deep, and the 2 J's were not as deep. They were somewhat more shallower. And with this kind of light color, that's very noticeable. So rather than adjusting the stamp, which would throw everything out of whack, I left the type alone, and I left this and I put a shim under it, and I stopped it right at the edge of the R, so that I basically had raised up the 2 J's and left the R alone. So I was able to come down and do another stamp, basically elevating the 2 J's and even them out, and now we have a nice clean stamp. The other thing to note from this is something I talk about and I don't always get to show off too much, but I've seen people using masking tape to mark off cut lines and things like that, and I think that's a bad idea. Here's why. This is low-tack tape that I'm using, so right off the bat, this is less adhesive than regular masking tape, which is pretty low adhesive to begin with. It is designed to be removed, and this is designed to have even less adhesion than that. You'll notice that on the natural material, we still, down here, you can see where I had the tape there, and what that did is that actually, even with a very low grip, it lifted the finish off, and you can have that happen on surprising leathers. I've had it happen on glazed alligator, I've had it happen on goat skin, and most frequently on veg tan like this. And this is not a loose grain panel. This is a nice dense, good solid piece here. This is not, soft belly or neck or something like that. This is quite dense, and still, we still had some grain lifting. And that is not something that you can fix easily or hide. Now, fortunately, because we have such an oversized piece here, all of that will just get trimmed away, which is another reason I like to do these oversized pieces and trim them, because I know I can tape it down as much as I want, almost wherever I want, and I don't have to worry about marring the finish of it afterwards. When I cut it all away, it's just right and everything's good, and that's just not something I need to concern myself with. If I had a template that was basically exact, and this was cut exactly to the piece I had to use, I would either have to go through the trouble of putting the tape on the back side, and then, effectively having raised portions back there that I had to be concerned about, or being very, very careful to only get a very small portion of the edge, and then consequently I have less grip, meaning that the piece might shift should I have to do another stamp on it. So that's a couple of the reasons why I like to do it this particular way. It is not the most efficient way, but I find it's a safe enough way for somebody who is, what's the term I'm looking for? As unscientific with foil stamping as I am. So that's kind of the rundown on that here. Now let me leave that. Here it is. Here's the template. And because my templates are clear acrylic, I get to lay them basically directly over it and line it up and say, yes, that is just right there. So there we go, perfect. So that way I know you can see it through there. That's exactly where I want my foil stamp to be. I put it on the piece there, it goes exactly where it needs to be. There's no screwing around, everything is just right and nice. So that in place there. I'm gonna block it real quick as I get my head right over top. Bear with me. Okay, mark. I'm gonna do a nice solid mark across the top and just very shallow suggestions around the other sides here, because when we're gluing these down, this stretching over top of the V slots, there's a little bit of shifting around and some fudgery that goes on to make this fit properly. So sometimes when you line these up on the actual piece, these edges are not exactly where they should be, and you have visible, scratch all marks. This here being so shallow, it's small enough to where it'll get hidden by creases or by the stitches, or sometimes it can even be polished out if need be. This one here, I know that no matter what, that's the top edge, and in fact, I'm going to cut it right now. I can be as dark with that scratch line as I want to be. Then we're just gonna kind of eyeball that, just kind of come in, leaving about 1/8 of an inch of space, trim away later after it's assembled. That looks pretty good. Now this is a fairly large piece of scrap. Still going to use that because you recall we turned on the fileteuse, and as I mentioned sometimes, my particular unit has a tendency to creep with temperature. So before we do anything irreparable on these panels we're going to actually use, we're going to take this scrap piece and we're going to test on that. And we'll also take it over to the bell skiver and test it there too. So we'll still get plenty of use out of this. Nothing pretty, but still very useful and very important. And it may save us from making a bad mistake on a piece we actually do want to use. So I've had the fileteuse warming up for a minute. Let's try it out on this. And that looks good. That's a nice deep crease, but it's not turning it deep dark brown, which would tell me that it's burning it. To hold it, I'm going to try to burn it. I'm going to hold it in place and see how long I can go before. Perfect. So actually this is good. So I know now that even if I have a momentary lapse of reason and hold the fileteuse still, or I'm working around a corner where I have to really slow down for some reason, I really am not at much risk of burning this. I can just hold it still right there, and we don't have any ill effects there. So good. That's good to know. We know now that our fileteuse is the proper temperature. We know that we don't really have to worry about burning this. We can go ahead and hit these pieces now and crease them without really much need for worry, unless I do something dumb, which could still happen. So let's see here. Back of this here. Like I said, I always crease the back sides first because the tip that I use kind of rounds the tops off a little bit, almost similar to beveling. So I like to have that roundness on both sides there. That looks quite smart. I'm happy with that. Very pleased with that. Like I said, it's been a long time since I worked with natural batero, so I'm a little paranoid about doing this. I have to be very careful. There's always up until the thing is in the box and in the mail, there's always risk of something going awry. And unlike other colors where you can polish them out or otherwise mask them, with natural batero, everything is in the street. Everything is there for you to see. Nothing is hidden, and nothing can be hidden. You have to take somewhat exceptional care when working with it. Then after that, we're going to go ahead and burnish these, which also is cause for concern because, again, with any veg tan, not just natural, you run the risk of when you get moisture somewhere, you can irrevocably darken it. So we have to be very careful that we're applying moisture only to that edge and not spreading it around with our burnishing canvas or something like that to really leave some ugliness behind. There. Nothing like coffee. When I was recovering from COVID, I found myself taking a lot of Dayquil and a lot of Tylenol just to kind of get through the day, and I took so much that I gave myself a bleeding ulcer, which was a cause for a hospital stay. So that was no fun, and I was very concerned upon coming out that they would say I could not drink coffee anymore. Thank God that was not the case. So I'm able to continue drinking coffee with abandon, and I intend to do so. Not a proper day without a cup of coffee. With these now creased, and actually that looks nice. That looks smart. I really should work more with natural veg tan. I don't know why I have an aversion to it. Maybe not so much an aversion. I think the trouble is I just like the other colors so much. Speaking of, here's something I wanted to do. Hang on. Said I was gonna show this off. This is what I started working on before I got sick. So this wallet took me 4 weeks to make. I'm very upset about, but it turned out beautifully. So this is white Himalayan crocodile on the outside, with taupe, Saffiano, and rose gold metallic chev the inside there, and a rose gold foil stamp too. So you may recall that earlier in the year I did one with white chev and the rose gold and the Himalayan. This is with taupe. And I think the taupe actually works, it works just as well, if not better than the white. It's a really good color match. It's a little difficult to tell with them being separate from one another, but if I kind of get them closed up like that, you can just get a hint of it. The coloring of the Himalaya and the taupe is almost a dead ringer to one another. Very, very close tonally, which makes this work really nicely together. On the inside here, I don't do too many of these, but this actually has a billfold divider in it, and that's a single piece of chev, split very thin and skived very thin at the top. Try to keep the edge thickness down. And then these edges here are painted with a custom taupe color mix that I did, just to try to get close to this. The taupe paint from Uniters is not the same taupe as what the Saffiano is. It's very warm compared to this, so it had to be toned down with a lot of blue and a little bit of black in it to bring it down closer. So it's a little hard to tell from this, but I think I got it pretty reasonably close to that there. But overall, I'm quite pleased with this wallet. It's a beautiful, beautiful piece. Certainly a looker. And I have another one. I had 2 different separate people order the same color combination, same theme on the same day. So I have another one that's going to be a mid wallet. That one will be back with the white on the inside rather than the taupe. But it'll be a mid wallet with the white and rose gold on the inside and the Himalayan on the outside. So that'll be quite pretty to see. I was really, really happy to have that one wrapped up and photographed, just because I had been tired of working on it for, again, 4 weeks. And number 2, because it's just so pretty, I couldn't wait to show it off. So you guys, other than that teaser I posted on my Instagram, you guys are the first to get to see it. It's been interesting to see the rush for Christmas come up. In my old business, in the paint business, summertime was always our busy season. We really weren't a collision shop. We were more of a custom shop, mostly cosmetic work, which generally in the wintertime people are not getting done. It's the summertime when they do that. So summer was our boom and winter was our dead time. And it's been awkward for me to get used to the idea that it is now inverted. Now the summer is the dead time and winter is the boom time. So I'm struggling mentally to accept that. I was pretty concerned going through summertime. I was like, oh my god, is this going to work? Am I going to be able to do this? And I still squeaked through it okay. And now with Christmas on the way, people are showing up out of nowhere to order wallets, which makes me very happy. So if you are one of them, thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. I, of course, was freaking out because I was laying in bed, unable to move or really think. I kept getting email notifications. New order! New order! And I was like, I'm so pleased, but I'm also so frightened because I'm not able to do anything right now. It was terrible. But everything is okay now. I'm being very sparing with the water. I am starting with a water burnish, and I'm burnishing from the rear. Because I really don't want to, if I get any water bleed over on this front edge, I don't want to burnish that because it will darken it. I can hit it pretty safely from the back and not have too much worry about that. And the canvas wraps around that top edge enough to effectively burnish the entire edge. We're going to hit it twice here. I'll let those dry. I'll come back and sand them a little bit with some high grit. And then finish it off with Tokonol. Get some sandpaper out here. I'm going to use 600 for this. Going to lightly go across the top. Smooth out what we've burnished a little bit further. Then we'll come back with Tokonol and hit it. And I think I'm going to, normally I go longer than this. I think I'm going to call it a day here at 1. So that's in about 15-20 minutes. If you have any questions about what I showed here today or things like that, I would say now would be a good time to ask it, because I'm gonna curtail the stream a little bit just until I kind of get back into the swing of things here. Mostly I just want to get back to it and start rebuilding the routine a little bit here. It's been a couple of weeks of not fun times, so trying to return to the normal routine of things here. Again, any questions about what we did here, I would say drop a message in chat for me and I'd be happy to answer it. For those of you who actually sat through that unexpected mess of the foil stamping, I appreciate it very much. That was much more complicated than I expected it to be. And you have that. You have some that just go together perfectly, and some that you spend half an hour just adjusting the letters this way and that, and kind of you don't know what it's going to be until you're doing it. Surely, I said to myself, surely just 3 simple letters, how difficult can that be? Well, gave us a run for our money. So, again, just trying to be exceptionally careful about doing this. Trying to really be sparing with the amount of material I use and where it goes. Yeah, John, I know. I may take all the J's and melt them down. I'll tell you what, though, the problem was definitely those letters. So I don't know what it was about them. They must have been cast on an off day or something, because they were definitely, there was something about them, let me tell you. Oh, that looks good. Smooth. All right. Got our burnishing done. Let's head over to the bell skiver with these all ready. I think we can go ahead and get these skived up. Again, we're going to use our test piece here. Just the camera a little bit here. Let's see if we can. That's probably about as good as I can get it with this, I think. We'll go ahead and we'll start. Let's do across this edge here because it'll be easy to see. You'll be able to see where the cut was compared to the burnished edge. So we took that hole about half an inch down in depth on that. We came down, perfect. We came down from about 0.8 millimeters to around 0.5 millimeters on the edge. I think that's just about perfect. I'm going to start with my two backing panels. I'm going to skive these on each on one side here. That other side on this one. I only really skive one side on these, which is the outer edge. Everything else I leave alone because I want a bit of thickness there for strength and to keep the stitch line consistent. The V-slots, I'm only really going to do kind of on an angle like that, not across the bottom, just on the two sides here, just to kind of help blend that edge a little bit. So that when they stack, there's not a whole lot of material being built up in those spots there. Try not to skive too much away across the bottom because, again, this is relatively thin, even for veg tan. So we don't want to make it excessively thin at the cost of, durability. We want to retain our durability while doing it. I think that'll do. Doesn't take much. I think everything else we can leave go. So again, there's the two skives we did there. You can just kind of see on these ones here, just on the outside edge there. Leaving the bottom alone, because again, we can stitch across that. We want our maximum thickness down there for where that goes. But these edges down here will kind of blend together. That should work nicely. I think I'm going to call it here. Again, I'll give a couple minutes here for any questions, things like that. I'm just going to take a little break here. I'm pretty good now, but I still get tired easily. I don't talk a whole lot these days, so I kind of have to build myself back up to that. I'm starting to lose my voice again a little bit. So again, any questions here, anything you might want to ask about, drop me a note in chat. I'm going to go ahead and do a couple little things here. I'll give you a couple minutes to do that, and then I think we'll wrap it up here for the day and come back to it next week. But for those of you who did hang around, I appreciate you coming in and saying hello. And again, for those of you who sent me all the well wishes and get well soon, that was much appreciated. I thank you for that. It was nice to be thought of. So I thank you kindly. This here, what I'm doing, I'm just kind of going in, I'm trimming out these little winglets for when these card slots get stacked. This lets them align flush with one another. Certainly not the most exciting fare, but something good to wrap it up on, I think. So Joe, that's actually a really good question, and first of all, thank you very much. I appreciate the kind words, both for myself, and I'm glad you enjoy the stream. My bell skiver, in fact, we'll switch back over to that. So on my bell skiver, I have actually never changed the blade. Some people go through that. There are problems with doing that. Fortuna makes a nice hardened steel blade, and the trouble with that is it cuts very well, but it's very difficult to sharpen. This one here is basically, this machine is almost bone stock. I've done very little to it. The only thing I've actually really done, I changed this feed wheel. These come with a stone feed wheel from the factory, and they work, but they're not that great. I bought a $9 rubber yellow feed wheel on Amazon, just a cheap Chinese one, and that works extremely well. With me doing a lot of thin weight stuff, we're talking skiving stuff that's 0.5 millimeter to less than that. The stone wheel does not grip very well. The rubber wheel does. So I switched to the rubber wheel, and I added an angle guide here, which you can kind of see, which is just a bent paper clip. And that's really it. That's all I've done. Most of the other things I've done to the machine have simply been dialing it in and adjusting it. Now, what does that mean? Many people do not realize that when you go to sharpen this machine, the sharpening stone is movable, not just in and out for engaging with the blade, but forward and backwards. And that determines where your sharpening stone is going to contact the blade and where it's going to sharpen it. So I think a lot of people run into trouble where they're running with a dull blade and they keep sharpening it and sharpening and sharpening it, and they're not getting any improvement, and they may not realize that their sharpening stone may not even be engaging the front of the blade. It may be trying to bite into the back edge of the blade, and they may have to go much further than they ever thought to try to do that. You can adjust that by moving the bell back and forth anytime you want to sharpen it, but that costs a lot of time. So what I advise people to do is take the machine, it's easy to adjust that. There's just a set screw that holds it in, and adjust the position of that sharpening stone to be in alignment with where your blade sits. And which I've done that on mine, so I'll do a quick sharpening on it here real quick. It does not take much, and I find that having a marker is helpful. Just like sharpening a hand knife. And this marker is unfortunately getting a little. I think I need a new marker here. There we go. Come on. There we go. So it's a little tricky to see. Let me see if you can tell on there. Yeah. So you can just barely notice on here. I've hit the actual cutting edge with a marker, so it's dark. And what you'll see when I engage the sharpening stone, I have this wheel set to be really only getting the front edge of this, so I know that every time I'm doing it, it's hitting the cutting edge. I actually I could probably stand to move the sharpening wheel back maybe another quarter of a millimeter. It's such an infinitesimal amount that it would need, but it worked great as it is, so I just leave it as. But you'll see as I engage the sharpening stone, this front edge you'll see will become shiny white as the sharpening wheel engages it. So we'll do that. I'm going to turn up the speed here. Hang on 1 second. I've got some shavings in there I need to remove first. Now, one thing with my machine, I don't know if yours is the same way, but you'll notice that I've shut the machine off, but watch when I press the pedal. There's a little bit of residual power in there that has to be bled out. So every time you shut it off, if you're reaching in there to clean that out, depress the pedal and clear it. It's almost like clearing a computer. When you power everything off and you hold the power button to cycle the power out, it's the same kind of thing. Do that with this, because if you were to slip and shift a little bit and accidentally depress that while your hand was in there, even moving just that little bit, this blade is very sharp, so you will harm yourself if you're not careful with that, because unfortunately, the only way to get in there and clean this bell out is you got to reach in and do it. Now while I'm doing that, I'm reaching in and I can feel I've got a couple burrs on here that I've developed from using it, so I am due for sharpening. So that's good there. All right, so turn it back on. I'm going to walk the sharpening stone in a little bit. And as I do that, I'm gonna afterwards go in with this, the honing rod, and hone the inside edge of the blade to take that burr off. You kind of want to let it run for about a minute. Generally, a minute is all you need. But you can see now where my stone has engaged the front here. Like I said, I could probably stand and move that back a little bit and adjust that some more, but that's good enough. That's the actual cutting surface. So I'm going to turn it back on, and I'm going to have my honing rod on the inside now. I'm going to do both edges together and slowly walk that stone back a little bit. Let's see there. It's a little awkward with the camera in the way there. Let's see. Yeah. There we go. Okay. And by doing that, I kind of gradually take it off. Now that should be good enough. So we'll take a piece of veg tan here. Get some. Let's see what I got here. Hang on here. Yeah, we'll take this piece of black batero. It's about 1 millimeter thick, and we'll run it through and we'll see what it looks like. Beautiful. Beautiful. So now what you want to look for when you're sharpening that, here's a good example here. You can see the difference between these two. This is very smooth, there's no resistance, and there's no striation in it. Take a look at this one here, this piece of green batero that I skived. You see these lines in it? See that striation there? What that's indicative of is you have a chip in your belt. You're getting a spot that isn't cutting it, it's burnishing it, and still, it is still cutting it, but it's not cutting it at the same rate, and you're getting heat generated there from that spot where it's not sharp. So if you have that on your blade, spin it slowly, take a good look at it, you have a burr or a chip, and you need to sharpen that out. What you want to see is a nice, consistent, no visible color differences, and it should feel, as it goes through, you should feel zero resistance. You should feel nothing. Nothing at all. That right there, there is no resistance. I can barely even feel that it's cutting, but you can see it certainly is. I'm going to take this back over to the other camera so I can make sure that you actually can see this. Here we go here. So here's the two pieces I cut here. So you can see it's about 1 millimeter thick. That took it down to probably under about 1/2 millimeter. So we basically skived that in half. That's a fairly deep skive. That's not a small skive. That's a good 3/4 of an inch right there. So it's cutting fairly deeply on that. Here's again that piece of green that I was talking about. So you can see plain as day there, that striation there. That again, that's a burr in your blade. So if you see that, or if you're feeling it, that's something you need to look at. So you notice that on my blade, like I showed there, we weren't even really sharpening anything other than just the very front end of it. Only about 1/8 of an inch on there. That's still enough to get a very, very good skive. Let's try it again here. Let's see. Try to find something let's do something a little more challenging. Because veg tan, beyond the fact that it is it's fairly easy to skive. It really doesn't present too many problems. Splitting it is another matter, but just skiving it usually is very easy to do because it's rather dense. And usually you're working in thicker weights. Anything about 0.8 to 1 millimeter is fairly easy to skive. Let's try something a little tougher. I've got here a piece of 1/2 millimeter chev. This is quite soft. So let's run this through, see how it does. We've got a freshly sharpened blade here. Let's see how it does with this. This is a tougher, more difficult skive. Here. Again, we're going to do, actually, we'll do this side here. So we'll do this side right there. So it's contacting it. I need to dial it down a little bit more just because we're working with something so much thinner. It's only barely kissing the blade. There we go. And that made a nice clean cut. I'm going to dial it down another 1/4 turn just to get more depth out of that. There we go. We'll do perfect here. We'll take this back to the other camera. So here is 1/2 millimeter chev down to almost a perfect feather edge. There's almost nothing left there. And you can see very clearly where the skive is on that. This is a budget machine. This is a very inexpensive skiving machine. This is a knockoff of a knockoff. Then the Fortunas from Germany are the nice, quote-unquote, nice ones. The Nippies from Japan are the knockoffs of those. And these machines, the Consos, are the knockoffs of the Nippies, as I understand. I bought this new 4 or 5 years ago for about $1,100. They're about $1,500 now. But they are incredible machines because, again, to have this kind of capability, if you're doing folded or bound edges or things like that on anything remotely regular, it's done. That's it. You can fold that and glue it and you're done right there. Trying to hand skive that is not a good time. You'll go through a lot of leather trying to get it just right. Whereas, like I said, you saw how pretty much effortlessly that was. The only thing I had to do other than sharpening the blade was dial the presser foot down some. So they're wonderful for that. They're very effective. And despite what people will tell you, these are very simple machines. If you have even the slightest mechanical understanding, if you've ever worked on an old car for about 10 minutes, you'll know everything you need to know about this machine. It runs off a single, basically, there's a single rotating shaft that drives everything. The motor drives that main shaft, which is connected to the bell, and then there's a couple mounts on the back for belts that run the various accessories. So your feed wheel, your sharpening stone, things like that, that's run off those accessory belts. That's it. There's nothing else to it. If you can't understand that, if you can't take a look at that and understand that, you need to go work on a car and just learn something from that. Because like I said, they're simple. These machines are easy. People get into this habit of, oh, I'm going to do this and that to it. You don't need to do a damn thing to it. At most, if you want, you can put another servo motor on it. And basically all that does is it allows you to run the blade at a different speed than the feed wheel. You notice on mine, my feed wheel is connected directly to my blade. So they run at the same speed and they run together. People talk a lot about having the separate motor, and I'm sure it's great. Frankly, if I can do this with it, I don't see a whole lot of need to drop another $100-200 on another motor for it, because it works great out of the box. You just have to take a couple hours and adjust the machine to your liking and learn it so that you know how to adjust it. Getting the blade positioned correctly to the presser foot, getting that feed wheel aligned properly and in proper alignment with the blade is critical. But again, you're talking a couple minutes most, and just looking at it with your eyes. I have to express some confusion at the general air of confusion that surrounds these machines, just because I look at it and I see nothing complicated. So if you have any questions about it, feel free to ask me. Like I said, I don't think they're that tough. I'm happy to show what I know about it. If you disagree with me on some of these things, by all means, please let me know in the comments or holler at me in Discord. But I think the proof is in the pudding, at least for me, that mine's working great. So why isn't yours? But with that, I think we'll call it a day here. Joe, that was a good question, and you gave me something actually interesting to show today, so I appreciate that. I hope to see y'all next week. Like I said, just kind of easing back into it here, so nothing really crazy. Next week, I don't know what we'll do, but hopefully it'll be a little more interesting. Hopefully we got something more exciting to show. I look forward to seeing you there, and again, thank you all for the kind words and the well wishes, and I hope to see you soon. Everybody have a good day.